This is response to a video floating around on YouTube, which a YouTuber named Voodoosixxx attempts to give evidence for the truth of atheism. Please keep in mind, all of the evidence he's supposed to be providing is supposed to be aimed at concluding that atheism is true. Nothing more, nothing less. The first thing I'd like to point out, as this is a problem displayed throughout the video, is the fact that Voodoosixxx is not attempting to say that atheism is correct. Rather, he is attempting to imply that Christianity is wrong, and somehow that makes atheism correct. This idea displays a number of logical fallacies, including the fallacy of necessity, by saying that Christianity must be wrong in order for atheism to be correct. So for the sake of objectivity, we are going to be looking at the attempts this YouTuber makes for concluding that God does not exist, or that Christianity is false.
I want proof and evidence that atheism is accurate and correct.
The first bit of evidence Voodoosixxx attempts to provide is a picture of what appears to be the Pope in an armored vehicle. Voodoosixxx is implying that if God that is the Christian God, was real, then the Pope should not need, because God protects all Christians from all harm. First of all, this argument says nothing about the ability of God to protect the Pope, because the Pope was never in danger in the first place. Secondly, this argument also contains a logical fallacy of necessity by saying if God does not protect all Christians from every bit of danger they may encounter, then he does not exist. God is a willful entity, and thus does not require a reflex to save every Christian in the world from all danger in order for him to exist. The second argument implies that since natural phenomenon can explain supposed supernatural phenomenon, then the supernatural does not exist. This argument contains a logical fallacy called false attribution, by saying or implying that the natural explanations can supplant supernatural explanations when the supernatural is above and beyond the natural. The third argument implies that because the perceptions of God differ, then he is not evident. First of all, this argument says nothing about the existence of God or the accuracy of atheism. Secondly, this argument is begging the question by saying that things that must exist also must clearly be evident, but we all know that is not true. The fourth argument implies that we must be correct about the location of an entity the first time in order for it to exist. Again, this says nothing about the accuracy of Christianity or atheism. Plus, the Christian God had always been said to have lived in a supernatural realm beyond our physical senses. The fifth argument insists that if we cannot detect the supernatural interacting with the physical realm, then it does not exist. This argument is very similar to the third argument Voodoosixxx gives. If this notion were true, then at one point in time, everything we could not feel, see, or touch did not exist because we could not measure it. The sixth argument implies that because religions are still unable to come up with a comprehensive agreement between each other, that means that they are all wrong. In other words, quantity will always result in quality. But I'm sure even Voodoosixxx knows this is not true. The seventh argument implies that God wants us to know He exists, and because He is hiding, He must not exist. This argument contains a logical fallacy by establishing an argument from silence by saying, because God appears to be hidden, He must not exist. Also assuming that God wants everyone to know He exists at all times is a logical fallacy called proof by example, by saying since God did want some people to believe that He existed, then He must want everyone to know that He exists. The eighth argument is a red herring, attempting to imply that because people may be dishonest while defending their beliefs, it means their beliefs are untrue. In other words, dishonesty while defending the truth makes the truth untrue. The ninth argument is assuming that because there is a lack of 100% verifiable evidence for God's existence, then that must mean He does not exist. This argument displays a logical fallacy known as moving the goalpost by saying, because the evidence is not good enough for us, it should not be acknowledged at all. This argument also attempts to establish itself from ignorance by suggesting that because something has not been proven true, it must be false. Also, we all know that 100% verifiable proof is not required for something being true. Again, if it were, then cells and other planets did not exist before we have discovered them. So far, all we have heard was fallacious argument after fallacious argument. No matter how many fallacious arguments you may have, they will never create a genuine one. In conclusion, from the evidence we have been given in this video, or lack thereof, Voodoosixxx and his fans cannot claim that God does not exist, nor can they claim that Christianity is false, or even that atheism is true. If they did, then they would be committing yet another logical fallacy called demanding negative proof by attempting to avoid the burden of proof for their own conclusion.